And I couldn't do a spinny kick because I was an 11-year-old boy from Nottingham with no martial arts training.
Hello and welcome to the Gandalf's Fist podcast. My name is Dean.
And I am Luke.
We are a progressive rock band from the UK, but we're not just musicians. We're also geeks, but well-rounded geeks. And on these podcasts, yes, we like to talk about our music, but we also like to talk about some geeky topics and just kind of chew the fat over all things science fiction and fantasy. Happy New Year, Luke.
Happy New Year, Dean.
It is 2022, or it will be when everyone's listening to this. And do you know what happens in 2022?
No.
The plot of the movie Time Runner, starring Mark Hamill, where he travels back in time to save the Earth from an alien race.
Ah, wow. Oh, you know what? With that shouldn't have been the topic, but we should totally have done that. We should totally have done those. You know what? We're definitely saving that for a future episode. Films that were set in the future in the 80s that are already past. Did you know? I heard a really interesting fact. Did you know George Jetson from the Jetsons is going to be born this year?
Holy cow!
There you go. Random fact. There you go.
So, Time Runner, Mark Hamill. It's a classic movie that I have not seen. It's got the time-honored trope of traveling back in time to change the future and set right things that once went wrong. And I think we should sort of chat about those movies a little bit today. I think everybody sort of is most familiar with that sort of idea from Back to the Future movies.
Yeah, but everybody's seen Back to the Future, and Back to the Future is very much talked about. So much so that most people's ideas of how time travel works comes from Back to the Future. And it's even like a meta thing where that's like how time travel is discussed in like Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's how time travel works. That's how everybody assumed time travel work. But we don't talk about that because, Back to the Future, it's great. I love it. I used to watch it a lot as a kid. But what's the fun in talking about a film that lots and lots of people have seen? I don't think there's a great deal of discussion there for us.
Okay, yeah. I think we should touch on some time travel movies that aren't Back to the Future. And I think the time travel movies that we talk about have to have time travel as the central motivating plot. We can't talk about like Superman. That's not a time travel movie, even though it's got like, turning the world back in time or whatever at the end. We can't have time travel as a plot convenience. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about movies that actually are about traveling through time.
Time travel's not the MacGuffin in these films. It is genuinely, it's the encompassing thing. So, Dean, I'm going to throw it over to you, and you can give us the first of our time travel conversations. What we're calling it, time travel conversation. That shit. Time travel, time travel adventures.
Time talk is what we'll call it.
Time talk. Holy crap! There we go. You can tell we script these things.
The first time talk I want to talk. Well, actually, I think when we're talking about time travel movies, we've got two really to talk about, haven't we? Two sort of topics: traveling back in time, and also traveling forward in time. And they involve two separate sort of things. Traveling back in time, I think, is physically, in terms of science, is impossible. But traveling forwards in time is something that is always seen in science fiction as something that is inherently sort of possible. With like it's physics. Like you go temporal time dilation and stuff like that. I think
the biggest example of that in recent years is Interstellar. That was that was almost praised by scientists as being that's kind of how time travel would work, which is kind of cool. That it is, there is an element of, and again, that's one of those films that it's not about time travel, because I don't think that's the main gist of the plot. It's all about, saving the world and all that kind of thing. I suppose it's kind of a halfway house. It's a bit about time travel and a bit about not. But it's I really like that film, and I really love the bit where they end up on the planet and the giant fucking waves coming to kill them.
Yeah, but it's that thing, isn't it, where time almost becomes like a natural disaster, isn't it? The more that they spend in a time dilated sort of zone, the more time is passing for everybody else. And this idea, that if you were to go out and travel at the speed of light and come back, everyone would have aged a certain amount of time. And, that's real science. They have to account for that on the satellites that are whizzing around the Earth, calibrating everybody's GPS systems, that time moves differently for them because they're traveling faster than everyone else, So they have to adjust for that in the sort of calculations and stuff like in the internal clocks and things like that. So these kind of movies, quite frequently, and you've touched on Interstellar there, you get this thing where, and it's been in science fiction programs as well, like The Outer Limits and stuff like that. The thing, people get abducted by aliens and then they come back and all of a sudden the Earth has sort of moved on and they don't realize that they are now living in the future. So my first encounter of a movie where this happened is a movie called Flight of the Navigator.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked this because I was as you were talking about that, I was like, oh yeah, because me and Helen were having a chat about this the other day and saying, what movies are you going to pick? What you're interested, what we're going to pick for the podcast. And I was like, I've definitely got one which we're going to come to, but like she mentioned Flight of the Navigator, and actually through my like little research day today, I didn't come across it, and I'm really glad you brought it up because it is an amazing film, and it was one of my like favorite like childhood films. Absolutely. Yeah,
I absolutely loved it. I can remember watching it to death on VHS, and everything about it I found, it was quite dark and sinister, as well. When he sort of suddenly like wakes up. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, a kid, I literally haven't watched it since I was a kid, so I'll be getting this a bit wrong, but he's like walking out with his dog and he falls down a hill and then he wakes up after getting like knocked on the head or whatever, goes back to his house and different people are living there. That happens in Back to the Future as well, doesn't it? We don't really talk about Back to the Future, but he goes into his house and it's different people living there.
Yeah,
so it's a bit
alternate timeline, that though, isn't it? Rather than the future.
That's right, yeah. So this isn't an alternate timeline. It's just, and transpires what's happened is, and they finally hooked up with his parents and he's been missing for years and years and years and years. And everybody's freaked out by the fact that he hasn't aged a day, just like Bilbo Baggins.
He's still a kid. Always back to the Tolkien, Dean. Always back to the Tolkien.
He hasn't aged a day. And so his parents are like, obviously they've got their like little boy back, but all of the science is held in this scientific facility and, all experiments and stuff like that. They've got the little computers with the zigzaggy sort of pen thing going up and down on the like paper or whatever and all that thing.
And Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yes.
And it's really random because in that film, I kind of like, as a young boy, I was like, oh, she's kind of hot, but no. Absolutely not. Like when I realized it was her, like, when like, Sex and the City was a big thing, I saw Flight of the Navigator, I was like, just like, what? But anyway, that's a different story. But yeah.
And the other one out of Sex and the City was in one of the Star Trek movies, wasn't it?
Kim Cattrall, she plays the evil, what's her name? She plays the evil Vulcan in Undiscovered Country.
There we go. We'll not touch on that movie in any podcast.
Oh man, it's one honestly. Like seriously, it's a little sidebar. That's probably one of my top. That's like top 3 for me.
Is it really? Okay. Well, we'll maybe come on to that in a different one. We have talked about Star Trek in a different podcast in a different guise. So he's in the facility, and then all of a sudden he comes across this big old chrome spaceship that just looks like a big silver walnut, really. But I can remember this blowing my mind as a kid, like the special effects in this. There's a bit where the like side of the spaceship comes down and turns into some steps, but they're not just like steps. They're like hovering in air, and he steps on them. And I can remember that being one of the first times as a kid being like, kind of, this is magic. How are they doing this? It's impossible. How is he standing on a floating step and stuff like that? And it turns out, that he'd been flying around with this being inside this spacecraft, and that's what's accounted for the time dilation and stuff like that. And he goes on a big old flying through the sky montage, listening to Beach Boys, something like that.
Yeah, Beach Boys, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And yeah, the whole thing, there's like a cool little sort of gremlin sort of thing, goblin thing in there.
There is. Yeah. There's all kinds of creatures in the thing, that other creatures that he's like abducted and that he's got to return home and things like that. I'd forgotten about that.
there's like the main being inside of it is like it looks exactly like, I'm conflating things in my memory. So if I ever look this up, it probably wouldn't look like that. But in my mind, there's like this big eye that sort of moves around on a telescopic arm that is almost identical in my memory to the big eye that shoots out the side of the door on Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi.
Very, very similar. Yeah, you're right.
And then he sort of has to fly back home, and there's some big sort of thing about his younger brother who is now like, you know, a lot older than him, letting off fireworks to show his way home. So it has a good sort of nice family, you know, reunion ending sort of thing. And it was that kind of movie, very sort of trying to tap into the E.T. sort of thing of, you know, weird extraterrestrial stuff, government facilities.
Time travel was a massive part of that, like my childhood. You know, time travel stories were just, you know, they're all just there. And I say this Flight of the Navigator had a, you know, yeah, the songs and the flying ship and the, you know, everything about it just, you know, blew my mind as a little kid. Like,
so that's my first pick as an awesome movie. Quite good for special effects, good for nostalgia, and yeah, it's one that I'm looking forward to rewatching with the offspring.
I've got one which I want to talk about, and then I've got two which I'm going to put as a pair together. One of them an older film and one of them a more modern film with the same actor. So the first one I want to talk about is the Jean-Claude Van Damme classic Time Cop from 1995. Now, I have very fond memories of this film, and I was talking about this earlier. I was just saying about with Helen. I was just saying, oh well, a film that I think about like a lot, or just films that like I think about when I've seen them, or I've seen them a couple of times, or like it just pops up in my head. They're the films that I really like connect with. You know, you're thinking about something and something comes up and you go, oh, that's like similar like that film, or that's like thingy, or you start thinking about the plot, you start thinking about the way things work, or all that kind of thing. This is one of those films. So if you don't know, Jean-Claude Van Damme plays a time...
Say his name again.
Jean-Claude Van Damme plays a time agent. And basically the premise is that time travel's like, it's possible in the future and people are going into the past to commit crimes. So I think that the film opens with basically a American Confederate wagon going through the Old West, full of gold bullion, and basically some blokes with submachine guns basically come, shoot up the wagon and steal the gold. And it's the first kind of inclination that that's happened is suddenly that Confederate gold shows up in, I don't know what year it is, 2040 something or something like that. But then there's things about going back into like the 1920s and like setting up like stocks and shares and all this kind of thing. So there's an element of that, but then it's basically just that thing of, at one point, I think Jean's wife gets killed. And then it's like he's then a shadow of his former self because his wife's dead, and he's like, you know, bitter and angry. And then there's that parallel dimension thing where something's gone wrong and then he ends up going back in time as an older self and his younger self's there. And I always like that. I like that in a time travel movie where the older self meets the younger version of.
So like, just to interject, like they set this up quite a lot in like we keep going back to the Future, but like everybody references that as a thing. And Doc Brown keeps saying to like Marty and stuff, don't bump into yourself. It could create like a temporal paradox, and it could unravel time as we know it. It would be a bad thing to bump into your old self. But they all do it in Back to the Future too, and nothing happens, you know.
No.
They all bump into older versions of themselves.
I think I've got a vague memory that in Time Cop, that's a really bad thing. And then if they touch, don't they turn into like a gelatinous, like jelly glue thing and then explode?
Yeah. Basically, like the antagonist of the movie meets a younger version of himself early on, to set up this as a premise. And like it's the whole thing of like matter can't occupy the same time or
Space,
something,
yes.
something like that.
Yeah.
And he touches his, there's something like that, and you see it happen, and it does a of the time special effect of somebody dissolving into nothingness kind of thing, I think. But they do set that up as a main thing and show you, look, hey, it is bad to sort of, physically cross the streams or whatever.
But no, this film just I don't know what it is about it. And like, if I ever think about time travel movies or time travel movies come up, it always just like pings in my head. I really should watch Time Cop. I tried to find it. It's not on Netflix. I was really annoyed. I wanted to watch it this week before we had this podcast, so I really wanted to find it. So I'm gonna see if I can find it somewhere. But yeah, it's a good film of its time, as in it was Jean-Claude Van Damme's highest grossing movie ever, I think, or second highest grossing movie ever after Street Fighter. No, after Street Fighter.
we need to do an episode just on Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, because there is some mad stuff. But I think this movie is. I tell you why it resonates fondly with me. I'm exactly the same as you. It is of the VHS era. It is of the going to the video store and picking one off the shelf. And Jean-Claude Van Damme was of that time, and sort of stuff like Time Cop and RoboCop and Highlander and stuff like that was like, you would go in, and there was no Blockbuster anywhere near where I lived. There was like a little sort of independent, video store. And
we used to get them from there used to be a thing in the co-op over like things, and then the Spa used to have them as well. That was
Spa, yeah. So there was two places for us. There was a shop in Silloth. It had a Happy Shopper, and it was
what a blast from the past.
Mainly a video store, and it was just one wall with videos. And if the video was out, tough, wait till next time. And then yes, the Spa in Maryport had the videos as well. And but yeah, just those sort of things of like first video experiences, and you would like look at them and you would like pore over the art on the cardboard sleeves and stuff, and that would be like the influencing factor. So something like Time Cop with a big like metallic sort of logo and that kind of thing, and they had like hand drawn art a lot of the time, what you would usually get on like cinematic posters and things like that, or like on fantasy novels and stuff like that. So it really was the sort of the sell of like the cover sort of stuff, it was like, and those kind of movies resonate, I guess, and it's a good fun movie. And I think one movie that I'm not really going to talk about later, it's a good time travel movie. I don't know if it's on your list. Looper, you seen that movie?
It is on my list.
Okay. Well, I won't say anything about it, but I think with Looper, when we come to talk about it, I think the people who made Looper must have seen Time Cop and went, okay, if we were to make this as a serious movie, not a campy action movie, how would we make it? I think there's so many things that transfer from that. Time Cop must have influenced Looper. Like I'm sure, like I know that in Back to the Future they did the sort of like hand fading out and the photograph fading stuff, but the thing about like a facial scar appearing when somebody has a fight in the past, that definitely happened in Time Cop first. As at least as far as I'm aware. So yeah, Time Cop, good movie. I think about Time Cop actually is we need to do another episode on this topic. Is good to average movies that have abysmal sequels with none of the original cast.
Oh yeah,
and Time Cop. I think Jean-Claude Van Damme movies are like good form for this topic. Time Cop has got a horrendous sequel with somebody else in it, and like Kickboxer.
Universal
horrendous
Soldier
sequels.
Universal Soldier.
Yeah. And so if you think about like the time when they're making like Kickboxer 3 or they're making like Time Cop 2. Time Cop 2, the guy that replaces Jean-Claude Van Damme is an Asian actor who was did you ever see like the biopic movie of Bruce Lee? The like movie like of Bruce
I'm
Lee's
aware
life.
of it, but yeah, no, I'm not.
Yeah. I can remember watching it, and I had a big Bruce Lee like thing as a teenager. I was all into Bruce Lee. I had all of the like films, and
did you have some nunchucks, Dean? I could just see teenage Dean whacking nunchucks off walls and Lynn coming in and slapping you around the head.
Yeah.
Like.
But they're like, me and my brother, like we were obsessed with kung fu movies, and they're like the early days of the internet allowed for like when Amazon was like a book company. and we would order like a Bruce Lee like book or like a kung fu book on how to do like a 1-inch punch or 4-inch punch or whatever it was. And we would wait for like 6 weeks for this thing to like arrive in America, literally on a boat, you know. And then we would get this movie, and then all we'd do for the rest of the day is try and like 1-inch punch each other, you know. But the actor who was playing Bruce Lee in that movie he was also in a Kurt Russell movie called Soldier, which is an unofficial Blade Runner sequel. You ever see that movie?
No. I'm aware of it.
And but he was in that one as one of the antagonists, and he is in Time Cop 2. And so if you think about the time like Time Cop 2 is being made and the time like Kickboxer 3 is being made, it's probably like coincides with the fact like that Jean-Claude Van Damme is not getting much work at this time. So if Jean-Claude Van Damme doesn't want to be in Time Cop 2 in like 1990 whatever, then you know you're in trouble.
Again, what we talked about previously, it's an 80s movie made in the 90s. Absolutely it is. And it's of that, you know, Starship Troopers doesn't take itself that seriously. You know, and there's bits of it. There's the bit in the mall, and I read about this the other day. It's like you see films that have like from a distant past, that have like tropes in it, that have tropes, and you go, oh, that's a bit passé, but actually some of these tropes started in those films, and it's because it's been copied so often in the last, you know, 26, 27 years that it just feels like passé now. But yeah, just little things like that. But, you know, the balloons in the mall and blocking it and all that kind of thing. And, you know, him trying to hide and all that kind of thing. And if I think of all the films that have a scene where people are being searched for in a mall, I'm sure those people have seen Time Cop and have copied some of the elements from it.
Yeah, Time Cop's a good one.
Come on then, Dean, what's your next choice?
So, talking about things that are like fun, you know, I've talked about one which is like going into the future. And I like cerebral movies, don't get me wrong. I like sci-fi and I like serious sci-fi. Like, have you ever watched the movie Primer?
No.
So, Primer is an example of a serious sci-fi time travel movie. The guy that's in it wrote the movie, directed the movie, starred in the movie, wrote the theme tune to the movie, you know. Now, I'm not like, I know it's like the Little Britain thing or whatever, but he literally did write the music as well. And,
sorry, I just got an image of Little Dennis Wharton now, sorry.
Yeah. It's just like so difficult to follow. The whole like distill like a really complicated plot down into like this, and this is two guys who are like engineers, and they accidentally sort of invent time travel, and then you end up with all these multiple sort of people traveling through time and a bit of double crossing going on and stuff like that. And if you were to sort of draw a sort of diagram of the overlaps in the different timelines and stuff like that, it would blow your mind. And it's like an independent movie, like really low budget and things like that, and really well regarded and stuff like that. It's the kind of movie people pretend to understand, because I think if you watch this movie all the way through on first sitting and you understand what's happened, then you are clever enough to actually invent a time machine. So I'm not going to talk about something that's serious in traveling back in time, like Primer, which I do acknowledge is a good film. I'm going to talk about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Sorry, I got a mouthful of Jaffa cake. There was supposed to be a cheer there.
The muted reaction. But I saw Luke like hands in the air.
Woo!
And for people listening, complete silence. He was like celebrating with a mouthful of Jaffa cakes.
Yeah, sorry. I got Jaffa. I'm not kidding. I got a crate of Jaffa cakes for Christmas. I'm slowly working my way through them. So. No, Bill and Ted. Yeah, great choice. No, I love this film. Absolutely love it. There's lots to love. There's the heavy metal and the kind of that element of it, and the, you know, the wild stallions and the thing, and then the time travel. I'm a history buff, you know, I love all that, and you know, all the different characters they bring in. Go on, Dean, tell me why you love Bill and Ted. I
think if you could take a film that has got essentially like a couple of dickheads in and make them endearing and you root for them, then you've got a great film. And it's true in this, it's true in like Karate Kid, because Daniel LaRusso is a complete prick. I don't know where that guy gets his confidence from with the ladies and like chatting up girls and stuff like that, because he's an absolute ass.
Yeah, that turning up to the fancy dress thing in the fucking shower cubicle so he can snog his would-be girlfriend. Absolute fucking dick move. Honestly, I think about that all the time.
All the time.
Seriously, I've thought about this. I've thought about Karate Kid. Maybe it's just because we're talking about old movies just recently. But yeah, I think about Karate Kid. Oh no, you mentioned Cobra Kai, which I haven't watched. I was thinking about getting into it, and when I was thinking about Cobra Kai, I was thinking about Danielson being an absolute prick. So
while we're back on this nostalgia trip, Bill and Ted was a movie that I watched the absolutely hell out of it. And they're not likable people, just like, really, if you met them in real life. They're cartoon characters, you know. They are cartoon characters. And
side note,
I don't know.
I think I saw the cartoon more than I saw the first one. I'm very much on board that I saw Bogus Journey more. That because I think they did the first one, and then there was the TV show. The cartoon show, and I watched the cartoon show quite a lot, and then Bogus Journey came out, and I was like, whoa. And it was like, I think I'd seen Excellent Adventure by that point, but like, I've definitely seen Bogus Journey more, but I have watched Excellent Adventure probably more recently than the other one.
The thing that makes it quite endearing is you have two complete like idiots, and the whole premise isn't really about time travel. It's really like, you know, the sort of, I think any good story starts with like a what if, you know, and then the writers will extrapolate from that what if. And the what if for this movie is like, what if you could go back in time and see like what Mozart was like as like a kid. These people we think of as like stoic and like the doers of great deeds throughout history. And, you know, surely at some point in their like youth, they were like, you know, a kid, a spoiled brat, or did stupid stuff. And I think that's the what if of this is like, you know, the whole thing is like, what if these people who save the planet unite the earth and eradicate war and things like that? What if when they were kids, they were just a couple of dickheads?
No.
You know,
and it's great, and it very much is, as you said, it's very much played for laughs. It's very much thing, you know, the whole, you know, Socrates is brilliant. You know, he obviously can't really speak any English, but he's just great. And then like Napoleon's great, and I love that like Napoleon ends up going to Waterloo, which is the water park, which is just fucking brilliant. And Joan of Arc gets into fucking like fucking aerobics, which is obviously all the rage in the 80s and stuff. It's just everything about that film is great.
So that montage where she's doing the aerobics and Beethoven is playing their like 80s synthesizers, and Genghis Khan is like riding around on a skateboard, beating up mannequins with a baseball bat. It's like the soundtrack to that entire montage when they're in the shopping mall and all these figures from history are like going crazy is like a track by I guess you would call them hair metal. I don't know. Extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know,
but there's loads of that. There's loads of that kind of thing, because it's the Skid Row quote from that film, or is that from Bogus Journey? The every rose has a thorn.
Every rose has its thorn is another hair metal thing. It's Motley Crue, I think.
Oh.
Every rose has its thorn, just like every cowboy sings a sad, sad song. Great lyrics, guys. But then he does the Dust in the Wind one by Kansas, doesn't he, as well?
No, it's great. And like the medieval princesses, you know, they get the princess on board, and then like they come back to the modern day, and it's all like they're all like a band. But I mean, the one thing we haven't talked about yet is Rufus. That just what a fucking awesome character. Like just like perfectly played, just absolutely fucking brilliant. I love him.
Well, for those of you who haven't seen this movie, the basic premise is you got a couple of teenagers who are complete stoner, like metalheads, and instantly like can identify with them, like, you know, being metalheads. You know, I don't know if that was part of the appeal as a kid. Probably not, because I wasn't really into listening to music when I first saw this movie. But they are basically like going to fail school, which is a bad thing, because they are destined to sort of change the world with their music. So in order to pass high school, they have to like do they have to pass their history report or something like really boring like that, do a presentation on like history or something like that. And so in order to make sure they fulfill their destiny, like people from the future come and give them access to a time machine and say, go and go throughout history and, you know, do some research or whatever and, you know, make sure you pass this damn thing. So what they do is just start kidnapping people from our history, and quite a random selection of people from throughout history. So they get Abe Lincoln, they get Socrates, they get Napoleon Bonaparte, they get Billy the Kid.
I forgot about Billy the Kid. Joan of Arc.
Joan of Arc.
Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan. And
Beethoven.
Two medieval princesses. So yeah. And then they bring them back. They bring them back to the future. But George Carlin, the stand-up comedian, plays Rufus, the time-traveling agent in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and he is an God rest his soul, he was an excellent stand-up, really funny guy. Mm-hmm. If you like sort of angry, ranty comedy, like, you know, like Billy Connolly's like later stuff and stuff like that, George Carlin is like the American version of that. Really great stuff. Yeah. So Bill and Ted, excellent. Be excellent to each other.
Be excellent to each other. Right, I've got another one which I was going to talk about, but I didn't know whether we'd have time, so I'm going to talk about it now. A very short interlude of a film that's very similar in vibe to that, but more modern, is Hot Tub Time Machine. Great film, like stupid, like a return to form for like John Cusack, who hadn't made a good film for like 10 years before that and hasn't made a good film since. Really good, like a great supporting cast, great kind of like, you know, great kind of, just a great premise. Chevy Chase is in it. It's insane. The guy from Back to the Future, the dad from the Back to the Future, plays the bellhop in that, and he keeps getting his like arm cut off, and it's like them trying to save that, and then there's like, it's just mad, but it's a great, like, funny time travel film. Basically premises, their lives are shit, all of their lives are rubbish, and they all like meet up. They go back to this place that they used to go as kids in the 80s, and they end up with some Russian like energy drink gets poured into the mechanism of this hot tub, and they find themselves back in their younger bodies, apart from the son of one of the things, and he ends up back there, and it's the kid from 2.5 Men, isn't it? Kid from 2.5 Men? Yeah,
I'm not sure. It might be. I recognise a few people in the movie, and as Crispin Glover from Back to the Future, yes. I definitely recognised it in that one.
But my favourite bit of that whole film is the end. It's just the bit where the guy, the really down on his luck guy who's really angry and stuff, called Lou, decides to stay in the past and completely changes the future and joins Motley Crue and that ends up being called Motley Lou. Founds Google, and that's called Loogle, and just completely fucks with the future entirety, and just that whole outward scene of like he's just playing with Motley Crue and stuff. Anyway, as a kind of like, you know, as a metal fan from the past of, you know, those kind of bands, it's just a funny film, and I do enjoy it, but it's a silly interlude. It's not, you know, if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, because it's definitely worth a watch.
John Cusack carries that movie. I mean, he plays the straight man who is unfazed by the fact he's gone back through time, which works quite well. The thing that stands out for me, I mean, it's not a movie I'm going to rewatch anytime soon. It is a bit, I mean, it's fun. I completely get it. The thing that is interesting for me, though, is, you know, in Back to the Future, we come back to this movie all the time, but the whole thing about that Back to the Future, which was made in the mid-80s, was the what if for that movie was like, what if you could meet your parents when they were your age? Yeah. And so for somebody in the 80s to meet your parents when they were teenagers, you went back to the
1950s.
Yes. So when Hot Tub Time Machines come out more recently, it's this exact same what if. What if you could meet your parents when they were teenagers? They go back to when they're teenagers, and his son gets to meet him and the gang when they were all teenagers and stuff like that. And it's funny, the year that they go back to is pretty much the year that like Back to the Future came out.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, that's a bit crazy, isn't it? You know, It's like almost the exact same movie. It really does play heavily on the storyline of Back to the Future. You know, that the whole thing of like, oh, I'm not going to exist if this thing doesn't happen, and that kind of thing, and you know, change in the future, like with the sports almanac in that kind of thing. So I just think it's interesting that like that time difference now exists where like it doesn't see like, oh yeah, go back to the 80s, fun times and stuff like that, and we don't think that that's too far in the past. But from the 80s to the 50s seems like a chasm. Well, but the difference in time is the same generation.
I heard something crazy today. 1980 is exactly the same distance from 2021 as 1980 was from 1939.
Yeah.
And those kind of things. I was born in 81, so that's like, to me, that's like, oh, okay, not okay. That's craziness.
We tend to sort of focus on things seem more recent because we have more things in common with technology and stuff like that. You know, like so I most of the time work as a teacher post 16. So I work with 16 to 19-year-olds mainly, teaching them various different things. And we were talking about films and things like that, and quite often in my lessons we get sidetracked, and they know how to sidetrack me by talking about things and that, you know. You know, when you had a teacher at school and you'd be like, oh, if we talk to Sarah about such and such, we won't have to do any work because he'll just chat about whatever. So they know how to do that, but I'm quite happy to segue. So we're talking about films and stuff like that, and philosophy and a little bit of, you know, physics and things. And somehow we came onto something about artificial reality or whatever it's called, you know, that kind of stuff. And I started to talk to them about the Matrix and, you know, how some people like, you know, Elon Musk think that might be real and things like that. And as I was saying this to them, they knew who Elon Musk was. But as I was explaining that some people genuinely believe this, I could see like a group of like 19-year-olds like completely start to glaze over and like just like stare through me. And not only had they not seen the Matrix, they'd never heard of it.
It's insane.
It came out before they were born. Like Shrek 2 came out before they were born, you know.
Yeah. Madness. Okay, so we're not going to talk about Hot Tub Time Machine, because I want to talk about one man and one man alone, and that man is Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis has made some interesting films, a lot of good films in his early career. Not so many good films recently. And there's a thing in general, kind of the feeling in the kind of the movie critic world is that Bruce Willis turns up, phones it in, gets his paycheck and disappears again. I think the film that you mentioned before, Looper, I don't think he did that. I think he's very much engaged with that film, and it does feel like he was part of that. But first of all, I want to talk about 12 Monkeys.
Yes.
Because 12 Monkeys had a very, very interesting, like, dynamic and all of that. And one thing about that film is global pandemic, which feels kind of very relevant right now. Two, it's got like I love the fact that movie is that the whole premise of that movie is basically a misunderstanding. That the people in the future have completely misread the past, and that they don't really understand how this thing started, and they think that this 12 Monkeys thing is important when actually it's really, really not. So the plot of 12 Monkeys is that Bruce Willis is in the future. The whole world's basically gone to shit. There was a pandemic and there was a lot of death and everybody died. And they've only got snippets of information about this thing. And one thing that keeps coming up is this 12 Monkeys. And it turns out, spoiler, if you haven't seen 12 Monkeys, don't listen to me. Skip a minute on and then come back to us. The spoiler of 12 Monkeys is that the 12 Monkeys organization was basically run by Brad Pitt, and it was basically just them letting animals out of a zoo. And that's basically all it was. It was basically just like a thing by activists to let the animals roam out and get the thing. And that was basically all they were at. And but there were connections because like Brad Pitt was the son of the people, like the owner of the company that ended up like releasing the pandemic and stuff and all that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a great film. And Bruce Willis hops around time in that film. He ends up in World War One, and he ends up, in obviously the modern day, and it just everything about that film. I would absolutely, I'd love to just like sit now and just go, I'm going to watch 12 Monkeys because it's that good. I just enjoy it that much every time I watch it.
I think again, it just comes back to this, a good what if, and it's like, when you can sort of think about in real life and you can extrapolate it into like, what if we completely misread really important things from history in real life, what if what we think about the past isn't true, I think it's a good what if moment. And I think good performance. And when you said about like Bruce Willis movies like not being very good, like now, I was like, I can't even think of him in a movie. I can't think of a single recent Bruce Willis movie.
Well, he started doing it in the early 2000s. There was a few films where he's on the DVD cover. He's selling that movie, but he's only in that movie for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And he's in it for the paycheck. There's a film called The Siege where he plays an army general. That's one of those. He's barely in it. I think he only comes in like 45 minutes into the film. And there's just like odd films like that, but like obviously like the later Die Hard movies, awful. There was this film called Surrogates, which again, good premise.
I did see that, yeah.
Not a great performance from him. Expendables movies, just turn up to get a paycheck, you know what I mean? There was a lot of that though. Harrison Ford did exactly the same. I think the only people that came out good out of that were Dolph Lundgren. I think he kind of relaunched his career off the back of those, and that Terry Crews guy. But Bruce Willis, interesting guy. He genuinely is in some of my favorite films. Genuinely, like I have mixed kind of feelings about the guy himself. So 12 Monkeys right up there with like, I love too many films. I could never write a top 10, top 50, but I would imagine if I was in the right mood, 12 Monkeys would be somewhere up there. It's a good film.
So like we might as well stick with like Bruce Willis and talk about Looper a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great idea for a movie where like you basically get stuck in like a loop with having to kill you're an assassin, and basically people are sent back through time and you kill them. And at some point you are paid a lot of money and sent back through time yourself in the future. And then you kill yourself, but you never know when you're going to kill yourself. But then you get the money from all your hard work. So you're basically in like an infinite loop of like working, but then killing yourself. And and then a guy tries to break free from this loop, and he is hunted down by himself, So when he injures the adversary, is injuring himself in the future, and you get the time cop thing of the scars appearing.
Oh, that scene where they torture that guy, it's absolutely horrendous. Like genuinely, like now thinking about it makes me sick because it's that grim. They're literally like, it's like he's got scars up his arm where he's written on his thing, and then suddenly his hand's gone, and then they do something else and his foot's gone. It's like, oh my god, it's like genuinely like a thingy. But the other element of that is there's this shadowy character in that film. I think it's called the Rainmaker, is it? And he's supposed to be the big bad. He's basically the big bad in the future. That means the future is rubbish. And again, spoiler, if you don't want to know the plot of Looper, jump a minute on, because I'm just gonna discuss it. Essentially, is that it's a little kid. It's a little kid who had a shitty childhood, but was special. He had telekinetic and telekinesis powers, but he didn't know how to control them. And because things went wrong with him, and because things went wrong, he basically ended up in the wilds and ended up becoming this Rainmaker or rain kind of character. And it's just like, again, a film I think about, a film that just, it's stuck in here as like, it's cerebral. It makes me think, and I come back to it and think, fucking hell, that's a good film, isn't it?
So I've got two picks that aren't cerebral now. One is a movie, and the other is a TV show.
Oh, are we allowing?
You're going to have to give me a buy on this, because we might not ever come to discuss this particular TV show again. I'm sure we will. Can you guess what the movie is, and can you guess what the TV show is?
I know what the TV show is, but I don't know what the movie is.
Okay.
It's okay. Let me have a guess. Is the movie Time Bandits?
No.
With Sean Connery. Come on.
No.
No. Okay. I was going to talk about that, but no, it's fine.
I was going to talk about Star Trek First Contact.
Oh, okay. Interesting choice. No, I ruled out talking about Star Trek. I was
because they use time travel all the time.
A little bit, yeah. So like there's time travel in the first one of the new ones. There's time travel in number 4, which is the whale one.
I thought about that. I thought about the whale one.
The nuclear vessels.
Yeah. Here's the thing about that is that I hate dating of movies by like traveling back in time to the present day.
I absolutely agree. But that I still like that film, by the way.
I have fond memories of the film, but it's not great for a rewatch. I can remember watching it as a boy. I probably said this before on a different thing, but like my dad used to work for after he was a teacher, he used to work for the emergency planning department in Carlisle. So they used to plan for like various disasters and things and work with the emergency services. So everything from a train coming off the tracks to like a bomb going off to, nuclear explosions.
Sellafield
like
melting down, right?
Yeah. And his offices were at Carlisle Castle. And so like they're little offices. So you would go through the like gates of like this really ancient historic castle where, Mary Queen of Scots was held, for Christ's sake. And you would go in there. And I can remember being as a kid going in and there was like I don't know if it was a take your kid to work day. It probably wasn't because I was the only kid there. But I can remember going with my dad to work one day and just playing with the like the CB radios. And then like they obviously had to do some work. So they just stuck me in a conference room. And I watched Star Trek 4, the conference room.
As you do.
So I do have fond memories of it. But like it dated of like being in present day. And it's really convenient because you don't have to make any, special sci-fi stuff. Because, it's time travel. But hey, they've come to just randomly. What a coincidence.
Yeah.
That the time that we're making this film is the moment when this event happens. And it dates it instantly. But something like First Contact is traveling back in time, but they don't come all the way back to like whenever that film came out in the 90s. They still in the like near distant future. I just think it was, of all of the Star Trek movies that has been out, it's the only one I think really that successfully managed to make, just like, I know that they did it a little bit with the like the reboot thing, but of the actual like old school sort of like Star Trek movies with the original cast before the started rebooting characters, like just making a good popcorn cinema movie. I think you could go into that film having not seen an episode of Star Trek and still enjoy it as a science fiction film. It's a self-contained plot. There's aliens, they go back in time, you have to stop them, and it's done well. And I just think out of all of those Star Trek movies, I just think it's the only time they've successfully managed to make like just a popcorn movie that works well.
No, I agree. I enjoy that film. I saw it at the cinema first time around. Was very much into Star Trek at the time. Very much enjoyed it. I like the elements of the period that they go into, though. I like the Zephyr Cofran character. That'll do, pig. That'll do.
Yeah.
And I like him, and he's a good character. And the fact he's, the bit where him and Geordi and Riker on the shuttle and they head out to space, and that he sees the Earth from, and it's like wow, and all that kind of thing. And I like the Lily character, and I like the fact that like rock and rolls like on the jukebox and stuff like that, and that Dancing with Vulcans at the end. It's all good, but no, it's a feel good movie in the end as well.
I think as well with Star Trek is that everything's always very pristine. The thing that people differentiate like the original like Star Wars movies and like how Star Trek is always presented is like Star Wars always had this like beat up used sort of world. And it was nice to just see a little bit of that in Star Trek. They travel back to a time when everything's knackered and it's like grimy sort of jukebox town and machines aren't working properly and stuff like that. So that's a bit of a fun aesthetic. And so I bet you can guess what the TV show is.
It's Quantum Leap.
Hell yeah, it's Quantum Leap. if we're not gonna if we're doing a podcast about time travel and we don't mention Quantum Leap, then something's gone tragically wrong.
No, you're right. And I think this taps into the thing I was saying about time travel being a massive part of my childhood. Back to the Future, the Star Trek movie we were just talking about, Flight the Navigator, and Quantum Leap. Quantum Leap was, I mean, Jesus, I watched that a lot. I mean, I think I probably only saw the first couple of seasons. I think by the time kind of like third season comes around, like Evil Leaper comes in and all that kind of thing, I'd kind of dialed out by then. But those first couple of seasons where it's it's Sam Beckett, it's Al, and it's put right the wrongs, and it's just like you were talking about before about the concept, the why and the how, and the fact that Sam only travels within his own lifetime, so it only goes back to the kind of early to mid 50s. There's some wonky episodes. I'm thinking about the one with Buddy Holly in, and the ones where they try and tie into like
anything where they're tightly like. There's one episode where it's so basically, like, I'm sure you know what Quantum Leap is, loyal listeners. The one person who listens to this, you've watched Quantum Leap, and if you haven't, then you are banned from listening to the podcast.
No, don't ban anybody. Nobody's banned.
That's the one. Banned. That's it. That's it. The one person that was listening has never seen Quantum Leap, and then our banned. So now we're talking to ourselves, so we can say what we want. But without going into why he does it or what's the purposes, he skips through time and basically goes about like setting right wrongs of the past, and he will jump inside somebody's body, and at that point he will take control of that person's body, and to everybody else around him, he just looks like this person. He will have no memories of this person, so he'll have to like do a bit of detective work to figure out 1, who he is, 2, where he is in time, and 3, what thing he needs to fix. And the only other companion he has is this guy who's like a hologram from the future where he is, and he's got like a little computer that never works, and they try and figure out, do a bit of detective work, and by the end of the episode he can't move on to the next time travel jump, the next leap, until he fixes the thing. And every episode will end with him fixing the problem in that time frame, and then morphing into the next one, because he's basically trying to get back to the future
and uttering the immortal words of "oh boy" at the end of every episode.
But you will get a preview of the next episode, which was a great thing, a little bit of foreshadowing. Like before the credits roll, you would see him successfully complete his mission. Then they would do the lightning face effect that I already talked about last episode, that I really love. And then you would see like 10 seconds of the new scenario that you're going to see next week, and all of a sudden he's in like Elvis's body or whatever, and then he would say, "oh boy," that's his catchphrase, and then they would cut, and then you get the epic don't sing
it, Dean. We'll get a copyright takedown again.
Oh yeah.
So
just as a thing, like we talked for the Christmas episode, last podcast episode, about how we did a little fake documentary about creating a Christmas charity single, and as a joke, in the background, I just thought I'll put Quantum Leap on in the background, and it was a tiny little computer screen right in the back of the room that was playing like a German version of Quantum Leap from YouTube, and we got like a copyright takedown notice from the copyright holders of Quantum Leap, who managed to spot that it was on in the background somewhere, which was crazy. But like you said, the episodes where it's too tightly focused onto like a historical figure that you recognize, like Elvis or something, like, oh, the thing that he thinks he's got to make sure Elvis gets famous, and it's always something else, like he's got to save the waitress's life or whatever, that kind of thing. Those ones are never as quite as good. This goes back to like why I like it so much is this was like a family favorite. This was something that we would sit down and watch like together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there wasn't much sort of stuff that we sat down and watched like as a family. Quite a random selection of stuff. We would watch Quantum Leap, we would watch The Wonder Years, and Krypton Factor. So there you go.
Shout out to the 80s. I have one random thing that I only realised rewatching them when I was when my little boy was young. We started watching the Horror Channel, and the Horror Channel on the UK TV, as it was used to play Quantum Leap in the morning. So it used to have episodes of Quantum Leap on. So I ended up watching like maybe the first full 2 seasons. And one thing I noticed is that Scott Bakula. Anyway, him. He is the king of the spinny kick. Absolutely. Every single time he needs to take out a man, he does a spinny kick.
Okay.
And this permeated into my childhood so much so that when I used to get into scraps and things on the playground, I thought the only way to win those was do a spinny kick. And I couldn't do a spinny kick because I was an 11-year-old boy from Nottingham with no martial arts training. So I used to fall foul of trying to do the spinny kick and not really knowing what the hell I was doing. But I only realised this by rewatching them and going, my God, this man does a lot of spinny kicks. And then like linking back into like my playground fighting style. And yeah, there we go.
I reckon you were the guy. There was always one guy when my memories of primary school. Sometimes there would just be an all massive scrap where everyone was like punching up like each other, and everyone would have each other by like shirt collars and punching the bejesus out of everyone. And in the middle of the maelstrom, the chaos, the like royal rumble of 30 to 40 people like beating each other up on a playground. There was always be one like little weedy, like little skinny kid, not fighting anyone, but reckoned he could do kung fu.
Oh, no. I was not that guy. There was another guy. There was a guy, little sidebar, I won't mention him by name. There was a guy at my school who was basically into all that, but didn't want to fight people with like his fists. He always wanted to fight with weapons because he was massively into kendo.
Okay.
And he genuinely thought the only way he would ever be able to defeat anybody was by basically hitting them with a big kendo stick. Sidebar, kids are mental. Right, Dean, I think we're going to wrap this up. So, we're not picking Quantum Leap because this was a podcast about movies.
We won't pick Quantum Leap. We're sure as hell not picking Hot Tub Time Machine.
No. I as we've talked about these, I've realised that Time Cop is good, but it's not at the same level as some of these. I don't know what we're going to pick. Dean, what's your pick?
Well, I've deliberately stayed clear of like Terminator.
Yeah.
We all know how great those movies are. We don't need anybody to say how good Terminator is. Just for the record, personal favourite, the first movie I rate above the second movie. I'm going to pick Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Okay, well, I'm picking 12 Monkeys. So that's it. That's
a nice balance.
That's it. That's very, very serious, angry Bruce Willis, and the base. I mean, not the most ridiculous, but it's quite a ridiculous time travel movie, and it's great, and it's a great fun, and they're both good movies, and I would absolutely sit down and watch either of them. So we haven't come to a consensus, which is a first.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's have more time travel movies. I think there's been a dearth of them in recent years. Let's not count Avengers Endgame. But
yeah, I think there should be more time. So the thing we should take away from this, we're talking about random movies. Let's make that our consensus. Let's not decide on like what we think is the best, because all the ones we talked about, I would happily watch. Even Hot Tub Time Machine, I would probably, with a few beers and like friends and stuff, we'd sit, because when we used to like sit down like before social distancing and stuff like that, back in university days and stuff like that, or back when you used to come and like visit me in my flat, we used to watch just stupid films,
like Captain Ron.
Yeah, and stuff, and any film can be a good film in the right company and with like a little bit of ale and stuff. So I would even happily watch Hot Tub Time Machine. So let's not like make that our consensus. Let's make the consensus be there should be more time travel movies that are about time travel and not as a convenient plot thing, like in Avengers. It's just like you knew that they'd written themselves into a corner and everybody hypothesizing about how they're going to kill that big purple fuck. And it's just like if people honestly thought that they were going to fire Ant-Man literally inside him as a sort of serious plot point. You always knew whenever somebody gets stuck in science fiction, they're going to go down the time travel route. It's just an easy out, So I'm sick of the easy outs, write a good movie that's got a good premise and don't have to rely on like, you know, Superman flying around the world or whatever. So the consensus is there should be more time travel movies about time travel. Luke, it's come to that time again.
It has, and I have no idea what the hell we're going to call this podcast. I think we should call it. We should go really random. We should go.
Dean and Luke's excellent 12-monkey adventure.
Yeah.
I think.
Why the hell not? It's our podcast. We can call it what the hell we want.
I think we should call it Time Talk.
No, because that sounds like a TED Talk.
It does sound like a TED
No,
Talk.
I think Dean and Luke's excellent Time Cop adventure.
Another one.
Time Cop adventure.
Dean and Luke's excellent Time Monkey adventure.
Time Monkey adventure. Boom. It's got monkeys in. It's got Dean and Luke in. It's got excellent in. Yeah, brilliant. Awesome. There we go.
I think like this, that some people like somebody maybe like choking on the like pipe tobacco that we like talked about like Hot Tub Time Machine and not the movie The Time Machine. So thank you, loyal listener. We have been Gandalf's Fist, and you have been listening to Dean and Luke's excellent Time Monkey adventure, and we will see you next time.
Bye.